What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry, fired up to bring you this week's episode because we're bringing in our good friend, Dianna Russini, senior NFL insider from The Athletic. You know her from the Scoop City podcast. You see her all the time on FS1. You need to be reading her What I'm Hearing column every Saturday morning on The Athletic. So much intel in there. If you go back and you read her most recent column, she's talking about Bill Belichick at North Carolina, inside info as to what's going on down there, and lots of information on the upcoming trade deadline, November 4th, 4 o'clock. That's it. That's your last opportunity to add talent to your roster. And I would think if you're the Patriots and you're in first place in the AFC East and your quarterback's playing than anybody ever imagined, you would be trying to add talent to that roster. The AFC looks wide open. Why not you? Why not take advantage of the opportunity staring you in the face? I asked Mike Vrabel exactly that question earlier this week.
I think we'll just continue to try to strengthen the roster each and every day. Sometimes those are small moves, maybe bigger ones, but I don't think that right now those conversations are centered around what our record is currently. I don't think that that's something that really bears into it. We're building something, and if any of those things can help us build and strengthen us and allow us for long-term, consistent success, then I think that's what we should try to do.
I understand what Mike Vrabel's saying. You're always looking for talent. It's not as though he said he doesn't want to add talent, but it also doesn't sound like he's necessarily pivoting because his team's now in first place and the Buffalo Bills are looking up at them in the AFC East. So, what might the Patriots be able to do at the deadline? How are they feeling going into this week? They're third in a row on the road. Mike Vrabel headed back to Tennessee. We're covering all manner of Patriots topics right now on Next Pats with our good friend Dianna Russini. Here's that conversation. There she is, our good friend, senior NFL insider for The Athletic, Dianna Russini. Dianna, thank you so much for being with us on the Next Pats podcast, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I make The Athletic use the word senior. I don't know where it came from, but I'm like, spice it up, make me seem important.
You are incredibly important. That's why we have you on the Next Pats podcast. Only the most important guests come on to our podcast, and you are one of the best in the country at what you do. Can talk to you about so many topics, and we will. But I want to start with one that is dominating the conversation here in New England right now, Dianna, which is Mike Vrabel's return to Tennessee. Now, you have covered Vrabel for a number of years while he was head coach there. He's here now and he's having some success. And he's telling us, Dianna, that it doesn't matter all that much, right? It's interesting. Is it actually important that I'm going back to Tennessee? We're not trying to win one for the Gipper here. You tell us, what's he really feeling about his return to Tennessee and how badly does he want to embarrass the Titans on Sunday?
Yeah, I loved that line. Interesting, but not important. It's such a good way to avoid giving the Tennessee Titans any bulletin board material. This game doesn't need any bulletin board material, though, because of the way things went down when the Titans fired Vrabel, which it wasn't good. The last 2 to 3 months of that regime it just really turned sour. There was a lot of miscommunication with ownership there and Vrabel and even those that worked under Vrabel. So I'm not sure that both sides have ever had a conversation since. So this will be the first time that they will be face to face if Amy Adams-Strunk decides to be out on the field. Typically, she goes down, not every game, so I'd be interested to see what she's going to do. But from coach's perspective, I mean, he's one of the most competitive people I've ever been around, nevertheless, just as a head coach. And if you just look at the way that ended and then you play into some of just the dysfunction that Tennessee has had really since he left, I don't really think he's looking at this as I have to prove to them that this was a mistake. I think if anything, the Tennessee Titans should look at it as, well, look at the other side of the field. The New England Patriots were really dysfunctional the last few years. They've got the quarterback and they went and found the right coach. That coach happens to be the guy we had that, we didn't really believe in it anymore, but they got the right leader. And they should really take that time, I believe, to say if they could do it, we can do it because we've got a quarterback too. But I think Mike Vrabel would be the biggest liar on planet Earth if he is telling people publicly that this game does not matter. If anything, I bet you this is one of those where he's going to probably have to control some of his emotions too, headed back. Because as much as tough as he can be, I think that was probably one of the very few times Mike Vrabel's ever technically failed at anything.
And probably one of the few times he's been told in his football life, we don't need you anymore. Right? So much success as a player, so much success as a young head coach, or as a young coach, and then a head coach in Tennessee for a time until he was relieved of his duties there. And you bring up a great point about the quarterbacks. Two young quarterbacks on both sides here. Drake Maye is playing out of his damn mind, Dianna. And locally, people are going bananas, understandably so. Nationally, though, tell us what you're hearing about Drake Maye's development in year two. Is the rest of the league as high on this guy as people are here in the Foxborough area?
Yes. And yes, even before we saw this, right? You go back to that draft, how many teams are trying to get into 3? You know, how many teams are calling New England trying to see if they could get Drake? Or at least Drake was the quarterback that teams that were in need, he was high on their board. I do love talking to those teams since to just get their thought. Most aren't sour about it. They're not that petty. And they'll share like, yeah, he's good. The characteristic that I've been hearing most, probably since the Buffalo game, was his toughness. And I'm not saying I didn't think Drake Maye was tough. I just didn't think of that word observing him the first few weeks. And so, others around the league, I think, are seeing that. And obviously there's been tons of, just, I guess, compliments to Josh McDaniels, just of what he's been able to do so quickly, right? We're less than 50 days into the season. And we're already talking about this development and growth. And the bigger conversation, I think, just around the NFL when trying to rehab an organization is, what do you do when you've got the talent at quarterback? Do you get the offensive coordinator? Do you go search for that Kyle Shanahan type, the Kevin O'Connell, the Ben Johnson in Chicago? Or do you go that route of leader of men? Tennessee's obviously having this conversation internally. And you see what New England did, which was really smart, because they've got the leader of men. They've got the right guy helping them find their identity again, which I think is it's almost established at this point, which is also impressive. But then obviously having Josh there, you really get the combo. You get the 1-2 punch, and you get both things you need at the same time, which is why a lot of people are really high on New England.
And if you have Josh McDaniels, you have an offensive coordinator who's done the head coaching thing already twice before, and so maybe he's not as much of a threat to leave for another head coaching gig as another younger, upstart, tight pants offensive coordinator that is, sort of the hot new thing might be. So it looks like they're pretty solid on that coaching front for Drake Maye moving forward. What about the talent around him, though, Dianna? We're a few weeks away from the trade deadline. You've had some great reporting on the trade deadline buzz sort of early in the process here. And I want to read for our audience something that you wrote about A.J. Brown, who gets a lot of buzz here in New England. You said you spoke to a GM in the AFC who said Brown doesn't look frustrated or mad. He looks indifferent, and that's not a good place to be. I think Howie Roseman moves him. It would have to be for the right pick or player, but a trade wouldn't surprise me. Do you think A.J. Brown gets moved? And what are the odds that the Patriots are able to make a big splash, or even want to make a big splash to give their quarterback a little bit more help?
As of the week leading into week 7, I can tell you Philadelphia is telling teams they are not moving him. They're not, because teams have called. Let's see what happens, though, over the next 3 weeks. Look, I think there's a small chance they actually pull the trigger on this, knowing that they need A.J. Brown. But we've seen trades happen in the past where the two sides just don't want to be together anymore. And we're all going to be watching what happens with the Eagles, because it's pretty obvious to everybody watching there's dysfunction there and something's not working. This is the Super Bowl champions who have now lost 2 in a row. They're going to head to Minnesota, perhaps face Carson Wentz, which quite the revenge game. So we'll see how they figure this out. They're not the same team. They're not. They are not what we saw in New Orleans, winning that Super Bowl with an offensive line that looks pretty banged up, a run game that is not even close to being what it was. Saquon doesn't look remotely close to the talent we saw last year. I think a lot of people thought he was MVP. And A.J. Brown he is not happy. I don't think that takes a lot of insider knowledge. He puts it out there for you. So I think the challenge for Philly is going to be, can they actually make him happy? And we don't know yet. We got to see how this goes. But I can tell you, New England is going to keep their eye on it. They're going to call just to see, because you don't know. I saw Coach Vrabel say that the record doesn't affect how they're going to make these moves. I don't think that's entirely true with teams. I think they have to assess where they're at, right? Like, for example, right now there's word that the Giants are in for receiver. That's not true, right? Because they're not even good yet. They're not going to give up assets if they lose the next 2 weeks. So that's just something to keep in mind. Obviously, New England is off to a great start. Very few teams win 3 on the road, and they're going to try to do this here. I definitely think with the return of Vrabel and, Harold Landry, that all that stuff is going to help, I think, maybe get them over that hump of winning 3 in a row. But we'll see where it goes. To me, it's defense. If New England's going to be picking up the phone and making a move, it would be on the defensive side of the ball. Unfortunately, pass rushers and corners, the supply and demand, every team is calling on that. So we'll see what happens over the next few weeks. But I firmly believe New England is going to keep an eye on all this.
I love it. Defensive help, I think, is something that they could use. They just aren't an incredibly deep team, Dianna. It feels like they're an injury or 2 away from really being up a creek at a couple of different positions. They're sort of already up a creek at running back, and it sounds like there are a number of different teams. Listening to you and to some other reports that are coming out around places like Houston, maybe Kansas City, it feels like running back is actually kind of a hot position right now, and there could be a lot of competition for backs. Are there any backs that you could see maybe being moved and maybe making their way to the Patriots? Because after that Antonio Gibson injury, they're really thin at that spot.
I don't think they make a move there. I know what you're saying. Teams I've talked to who I know are trying to move their running backs have not received calls from New England. Unless that could change, of course. You have to always say that because I don't want everyone yelling at me. But I think they would have been ahead on this. I think if they felt the way fans felt about the running back play, which, look, the run game is not good. They know that. And obviously that was a point of focus this week in preparation to face Tennessee. But I don't think that this is something where this is a team an organization that wants to collect picks. I think you got to keep that in mind too. They're building this thing for the long haul. And, a lot of teams that are making these kind of moves are all in for right now without thinking of anything in the future. I think New England is going to be a little bit more particular about how they make moves before this deadline. I could see them doing it. I just don't think it's going to be running back. But Breece Hall's a name. The New York Jets have gotten some calls from teams that are looking for running back. We'll see what they do. They keep claiming they're not going to do it, but I bet you for the right price, they'd move them.
Last thing I have to ask you, because you're not just an NFL insider, senior NFL insider, but all over the college game as well, and specifically what Bill Belichick is doing or not doing down at North Carolina. And you had a very interesting report, which people up here, I think, found to be interesting and important. Bill Belichick maybe still looking at New England as the source, or people within UNC looking at New England as the source of some of the negative headlines that have come out about the head coach for the Tar Heels of late. Is he still holding such a grudge against people up here, Dianna, that he's just feeling as though anything bad that comes his way is coming from New England? Or what can you tell us about his feelings or the program's feelings towards people up here?
Do you know those people in your life who went through a breakup and they still think that their ex is doing things to them? And you're like, they've moved on. They're not doing anything to you. They don't care anymore. That's kind of how I feel that situation is, where I do believe Belichick and Lombardi are in this bubble where they're defensive right now, and they've got their guards up because everyone's coming at them. Some of it because they're not winning. They're not very good. The program's not good right now. The dating, the Jordan stuff, obviously, is part of all of this, whether they like to admit it or not. It's a distraction, and it puts a target on the back of Bill because it's all just a bizarre thing. But I don't get the sense that New England is doing anything. It's not even the sense. I don't have any reporting where New England is doing things to make Bill Belichick look bad in North Carolina. In fact, anyone I talk to in the Patriots organization, they don't mock it, but they feel like this is like Bill fighting a ghost at this point, right? New England's moved on. They're trying to turn this thing around. They're trying to win. They respect and understand the cachet and everything that Bill brought for so many years, but they want to move on to the next girl here. I guess Vrabel would be the next girl, and if I'm going to go with the analogy, but which is interesting too, right? Because Vrabel and Belichick have a good relationship, but there's this grudge. So yeah, to a very long way around the barn there. Yeah, Bill Belichick and Mike Lombardi think that the Patriots are doing this to them, when I can tell you that the losing isn't helping. But here's what I can tell you, just talking to them, Bill's happy, right? He wants to be there, which I think is hard for people to believe because it's not going well. But in terms of what he's looking for, the coaching, the teaching, the things that he thinks he's improving there, he likes it and wants to stay there. So I know there was a lot of gossip and I think bad tweets out there about him looking for a buyout. I talked to them. They said it's all false. It's not true at all. They want to be there. So we'll see how it pans out. But they're going to double down on wanting to be there and blaming New England for some of the problems.
It doesn't surprise me that he is enjoying it. He loves football. He loves football. He might love it a little less if the winning doesn't come along with it, but that teaching aspect, that's who he is. That's who he's been at his core for a long, long time, so that doesn't surprise me at all. Dianna Russini, fantastic reporting from you as always. Thanks so much, my friend, for sharing all of your knowledge with us here on Next Pats. Let's have you back again soon, okay?
I can't wait. Thanks, Phil.
Coming up on the Next Pats podcast, we're talking who's next. Studs on both the offensive and defensive sides of the ball who could be making their way to New England next spring during the draft. We're also taking your mail. It's all coming up next on Next Pats. Welcome back to Next Pats. It's time for our Who's Next segment where we're talking about draft prospects in 2026. I know it's a long way out. I don't care. And I know you don't care either because it's never too early to talk draft. And one of the most exciting draft prospects for next spring is someone by the name of Arvell Reese, a linebacker out of Ohio State. If you've had a chance to watch this Buckeyes defense, led by Matt Patricia, by the way, you know it is absolutely loaded. And Reese might be the most physically gifted player on that side of the ball. 6'4", 243 pounds. He's a true junior. Didn't rack up a ton of stats last year in his second season. Why? Well, he's playing behind JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer, both guys that we talked about on Next Pats last spring, who were drafted. Speed to power is clearly there for Reese. You can see him bull rush opposing offensive tackles. You can see him long arm opposing offensive tackles, shed easily. He has easy power for somebody who's just a shade over 240 pounds, can play the run. He plays off the line and on the end of the line. And his pursuit and his hustle and his finish are all next level. You could see him spy quarterbacks that have real mobility and be able to chase them down. You can see him chase down run plays from the weak side of the formation all the way across the field and bring them down. You can see him ragdoll tight ends. I'm not sure what Reese can't do as either an off-the-ball linebacker or a true outside linebacker, an edge defender, and potentially Mike Vrabel's defense. You think he'd be interested in an Ohio State Buckeye who plays that position and plays it the way that Reese does? Our buddy Dane Brugler from The Athletic compares Reese to the Predator. Yeah, a fictional movie character. I get it. It doesn't make a ton of sense, but it kind of does when you watch Arvell Reese play. Have to keep an eye out for him next spring. Meanwhile, on the offensive side of the ball, let's talk about Denzel Boston, the wide receiver from Washington, 6'4", 210 pounds, led Washington last year with 807 yards and 9 touchdowns last season. The first thing that stands out to me watching Boston, vice grips for hands. You can see him go up in contested catch situations, pluck the football at its highest point, have a defender with his arm between Boston's arms, ripping at the football, and the thing still will not be pried loose. He is a physical stud, especially at the collegiate level. He will box you out, go up, and win that rebound 9 times out of 10 is what it feels like. And his body control is excellent. This is somebody who projects as an X receiver moving forward. And so if Kayshon Boutte continues to emerge and continues to play well, maybe the Patriots don't feel like they need to look for that X because that's the spot that he's been playing and he's been excelling of late clearly. So how much of a need this position is, I guess, is worthy of debate. but you have to consider Denzel Boston if he falls to you in the draft, because he can play. And he might not be the most twitchy. He might not be the most explosive receiver in this year's draft class, but the ability to win in contested situations is a critical one. And you know Mike Vrabel will love his play style because he will light you up in the running game. You can see him cracking defensive ends, blocking down. You see him actually return punts on occasion. This guy is tough and would fit in a New England Patriots program run by Mike Vrabel. All right, let's get to your mail, and we've got Will ADV coming at us from Brazil. Thanks for checking in, Will. He asks, to what extent are the Patriots' ground game difficulties due to the running back's lack of confidence in ball security or the offensive line's ability to open up the gaps? It's a great question, Will, and it's something that Mike Vrabel actually acknowledged this week in one of his press conferences. He was asked, are those backs just so focused on holding onto the football that it's actually taking away from their creativity or their speed or something that's preventing them from being more productive in the run game? And Vrabel said, quote, I think probably everybody is. I wouldn't say that it's just Ramondre. I think that that's something that probably both backs, that would be Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson, that carried the ball yesterday probably are focused on. Now, Vrabel went on to say, when we don't turn it over, we win. And so whether or not they're actually so focused on protecting the football that it's limiting their run game, it might actually be helping them win football games because they're not giving it to the other team. So there is a balance there, but you hit on something that is a factor, it seems, according to the head coach. As far as the offensive line is concerned, it feels as though there's a different weak link every time there's a negative run the last few weeks for the New England Patriots. Will Campbell missed a block on the goal line, and they were stopped short of a touchdown. Mike Owenu lost a block. Garrett Bradbury lost a block. Stephon Diggs at one point is blocking the force on the edge. He loses that one-on-one rep against a safety, and that leads to a loss of yardage. So it feels as though the Patriots could be close because there's not one glaring weakness. It's just consistency all the way across the board. Offensive linemen, tight ends, again, even receivers at times. They just need to hold their blocks a little bit longer. They might be able to break some of these runs. Our next question here is from BT Flea 0608. He asks, a lot of snaps for Austin Hooper and Matt Collins, yet the run game is bad. Maybe give some to Demario Douglas and Kyle Williams? I don't hate that idea, BT Flea, although the Patriots are going to have to get this run game situation resolved. You don't want to have to put everything on Drake Maye's plate week after week after week. You want to be able to be more balanced, especially here in New England, especially if you're trying to make a push for the postseason. Your most important games are going to be played in the conditions in December and January. The Patriots right now are 30th in EPA per rush and 31st, in success rate with their running game. That's according to Next Gen Stats. So you have to get it figured out. Now, that being said, I'm all for getting more speed on the field and allowing Drake Maye to do what he does well while you're trying to figure out your running game. Don't slam your heads into a wall trying to figure out the run if it's going to prevent you from being efficient on offense in general. Put the ball in Drake Maye's hands when you need to and allow him to throw the ball down the field a little bit more often, whether it's to Kyle Williams, that's what he's supposed to be bringing to this offense, or Pop Douglas. I know he's undersized, but he has real speed. He ran in the 4.4s before he was drafted a few years ago. He has real speed to be able to threaten safeties in a way that other receivers on this roster, maybe outside of Kyle Williams, really don't. So I know he doesn't look like that prototypical deep threat, but be willing to use Pop Douglas down the field. Be willing to use Kyle Williams down the field. One thing that I've found fascinating is that even though Drake Maye right now leads the NFL in completion percentage on pass attempts that travel at least 20 yards beyond the line of scrimmage, one of the best deep ball throwers in football this year. Got it? He is, and it passes the eye test. That number does. He's still 26th in deep passing attempts this year. So it hasn't even really been a staple of their offense, even though it's one of their quarterback's greatest strengths. You have to figure out a way to stress those safeties more. That might allow a safety to come out of the box, and it might actually open things up for your run game. And boom, before you know it, you might be a little bit more balanced because you're pushing the ball down the field with a quarterback who can do it. All right, thanks so much for your mail, friends. And thanks again to the Athletic's Dianna Russini for joining us. We're going to be right back here next week following the Vrabel Bowl. Patriots, Titans. And if you could, do me this favor, will you? If you love the Next Pats podcast, check out the breakdown on Monday nights, 6 o'clock every single week. Myself, Ted Johnson, we're breaking down the nitty-gritty detail of all the most important plays from the previous day's game. So, win or lose for the Patriots. And how could you be picking against the Patriots this weekend in Tennessee against one of the worst teams in football? Win or lose, we'll be there Monday night, 6 o'clock, breaking it all down. I promise you'll love it. Thanks again for being with us here on Next Pats. We'll talk to you next Friday.